Welcome to the Liberated Feminine Podcast. I'm Lucy Lampy, your host, and in this episode, we're exploring the leadership of the feminine frequency. In the world of feminine, masculine, energetic polarity, both within ourselves and in relationship, this is a hot topic of discussion. Who really leads? Is it the feminine or is it the masculine? And again, not just in relationship with another human being, but within yourself. Because remember, the inner union that you embody is going to be reflected in the outer union that you have with a partner, with another person in relationship. And what's interesting about going deeper into the nuance and the day-to-day practice and embodiment of what it is to be in our masculine energy, in our feminine energy. The deeper we go into that, the more we see that a lot of what we thought was masculine energy is not quite that, and the same for the feminine. So let's clean that up just a little bit before we go any further, because a lot of times when women say, oh, I'm just too in my masculine, or I'm not feminine enough, what's actually happening is that they are operating from a place of distorted masculine energy, the kind of energy that wants to control and extract and power over her inner feminine. And so what happens? What happens then? Well, I personally lived this for so many years, so I can speak to my own experience on this. What it looked like for me in my life was steamrolling through emotions, not giving myself space to feel, making my life revolve around productivity, more so than connection, placing my worthiness in how much I was accomplishing or achieving, feeling like I had something to prove. And none of this is true, sacred, masculine energy. That's all part of the distortion. The distortion comes in when we are operating from the energy of fear, scarcity, lack, as opposed to operating from this frequency of love, which will naturally step up and rise to protect and provide. When I started to clean up my relationship with my inner masculine, which perhaps on a different episode we can go more into that, what that looked like, then that inner masculine in me started to protect my inner feminine, started to be fiercely devoted to creating these spaces for her to feel, these sacred spaces and rituals and daily practices for her to work through some deep trauma and shame and grief and rage. He really like put that stake in the ground and said, this, we are doing this, and I am here for you. I'm holding the space for you. I'm not going anywhere. I've got you. Rooted, anchored into truth, anchored into love. And that is how our masculine is meant to operate. That is the power. Not all of it, but a big part of the power of the masculine is this is where we're going. This is the vision. And I am wholeheartedly committed to whatever I need to do to move in that direction. Now, another distortion about masculine energy is that it is very rigid. That once we have the vision, we have the mission, this is it. There is no wiggle room. We have to force ourselves to show up, but that is just not it. That's not it. It's not about forcing things, but about connecting into that deeper vision when you don't feel like it. Because there's a difference between not feeling like doing something and not wanting to do it. And there are plenty of times in life where we just don't feel like it, but we know that this is ultimately what we want. Getting up to do my dancing, to do my walk, to do my rituals, or maybe, for a lot of people, and for me in some seasons, getting up to go to the gym, that was an act of love. That was an act of love. Even if I didn't feel like it, the deeper desire was the ways that would nourish me. And so I would show up. Not out of force, like, hey, you're a horrible person if you don't do this. Not shaming myself into it, but reminding myself, look, you want this, and this is why. And these are the two different outcomes of how your day can feel and how you will feel in your body if you do get up and do this versus if you don't. And you stay in bed a little bit longer and you lose momentum, and then you don't go and do the things that nourish you, and then you feel more mentally exhausted and frazzled and on edge, and then my kids would get the result of that. So I could see those two outcomes playing out, and I could choose based on the bigger vision, not out of my inner masculine forcing my feminine into like, we're gonna go lift weights today, or whatever it is, in that season of my life. And so this is a really important piece, because the masculine does not need to force. He gets to lead. Now again, we're exploring the nuance of what it actually means to lead. So likewise with distorted masculine, sometimes when we have this swing of the pendulum from what we think is us operating in our masculine, but it's actually distorted masculine, we swing to the other end of the pendulum of, well, now I'm just going to be feminine. And what that can look like for a lot of folks, and maybe you're in this camp right now, if so, that's totally okay, all right? Observe that what tends to happen in that swing to the other end, to the other polar opposite, is lack of structure. That you're so deep in your pleasure practices and in your dancing flow and just like feeling that your energy is scattered. That it feels like, I got so much life force, so much Shakti, so much however you want to define this or how you experience this in your body, and yet my business isn't working. I am undisciplined in the things that are actually going to nourish the life that I want to build. Things like this. A lot of the women that have found my work, they say, how are you so consistent in the work that you do, in content and courses, etc., showing up for your life? I think one thing that has helped me is literally the fact that I have kids, because I didn't quite get to swing fully into the other opposite of just kind of, dancing and self-pleasuring all day, but I had my own version of that. It just looked different. I definitely was a lot more lax in my structure, but also I recognize that part of the design in these two, like far end spectrums is that allowing the distortions in my feminine energy to kind of just run their course was a really important part of the process. That's how I got to recognize them, that my distorted feminine would say, well, I just don't feel like it. The entitled little princess would come out, the brat, and I got to learn how to actually eroticize that, how to play with that, how to not judge that and shame that and say, what the fuck is wrong with you that you can't just get off your ass and do shit? Because my distorted masculine would, be wanting to chew her out. And to bring so much grace into this whole process, this is so key. Because if you're in a season where you just want to create whatever tickles your fancy that day, maybe the deeper purpose in that is you opening your channel, opening your vessel to receive inspiration that distorted part of your inner masculine doesn't feel is productive enough, or that you can monetize, or you can turn it into a big accomplishment or a goal. And so part of this too, just to zoom out, just to help you zoom out and see a bigger picture of what's actually happening here. Part of that swing to the other end of the pendulum is you learning to soften your grip on the reins. Learning to surrender control, which you never actually had in the first place. It just appeared that you did. And so now you're seeing, oh shit, I don't actually have the control over this stuff that I thought. But that controlling aspect of my distorted masculine thought that he did. And to top that all off, a lot of the efforts that I was making were made from a place of scarcity, fear, and lack. So I hope that zoomed out perspective helps, because it's not that necessarily you need to, or even can, skip over the deep dive into the more distorted aspects of the feminine. It's an important place to become acquainted with the wounds that exist there. It's an important place to reclaim these parts of yourself that are just, like I said, like bratty, entitled, wounded little princess, syndrome. And to love on them and integrate them and bring them home into the wholeness of yourself. And then and only then, when you integrate these parts of yourself, of your feminine and your masculine, but in this example, your feminine, that you still judge, then you can embody this powerful, sovereign, clear channel, just not fucking around, unfuckwithable feminine frequency. Now, what does all of this have to do with which energy actually leads? And it's that. It's exactly that. The more clear and distilled, the more clear your channel and the more distilled the truth of what your feminine is expressing and what she is embodying, the masculine is going to respond to that differently. The feminine frequency leads first. The feminine frequency activates something in the masculine, and then he takes action. Now, on the outside, right, what we see is that the masculine aspect of us, the go-getter, this is what we're doing, I got my task list now and let's fucking go. Or in a relationship, he's planning the date, or he's taking initiative on planning the trip, or whatever it may be. But the feminine frequency leads first. And let's say a man, right? A man who embodies a lot of masculine energy, and in that relationship, he is the more masculine being and she is the more feminine one. If he is attuned to her, then he will be more keenly receptive to what that frequency is, even if she doesn't even know, even if she doesn't know, even if she's not fully aware what that frequency is that she's bringing in. And then his action takes shape based on that. Men in general are a lot more sensitive to energies than a lot of women give them credit, than a lot of men give themselves credit for. And this can be most powerfully reflected back into the mother-son relationship. When little boys learn that if I act this way, and by the way, same for little girls and their fathers and mothers, but in this example, just track with me here. When a little boy observes a certain reaction from his mother, his nervous system is learning, okay, it's not safe to do this. I get rewarded for that. I receive acknowledgement for this. I receive criticism for that. Let me adjust accordingly. And he is not only responding to her actual words and actions, but to her energy, to the energy that she is embodying. And little boys learn to be attuned to this so early. Some, when they grow up to be men, choose to tune this out by turning on the game instead, by popping a couple beers instead, by just kind of, withdrawing and being in their own space. And this is a different conversation than having this alone time and solitude. That's very important. I'm not talking about that. But escaping is something different altogether, because there is so much to attune to. So if his partner now, as a grown woman, brings in this energy of criticism, again, not even the words, not even the actions, this energy of like, God, it's just never good enough. Like, you're just like, why can't you just get it right? This energy of disrespect or lack of reverence, this energy of distrust that makes her want to mother him, to micromanage, to tell him how to do things correctly because he just can't get it right, to nag him about things because he's not doing the things. When he tunes into that, when he feels that, he responds to it. Now, I'm not saying that the man doesn't have any responsibility in that dynamic. Both people do. And the thing is, the more aware and attuned a man is consciously to his woman from a place of love and not from a place of, not wanting to piss her off or not wanting to lose her or not wanting to have to deal with her shit today, but from a place of love and protection and provision and service to the union itself. When he's attuned in that way, he will pick up on things that she may not even know that she is emitting. Sometimes when I walk into the kitchen or into a space where my partner is, and I don't even necessarily feel really off, but I don't feel super vibrant. I'm not feeling like full of life and fully myself like I usually do now, which is for a long time in my life, that was not the norm. For the past several years, that has been more of the norm. And he knows that generally the frequency that I'm emitting is one of contentment and joy and hope and anticipation of what the day holds, and love, peace. And so if I come in with this frequency, again, I'm not scowling, I'm not crying, I don't have bags under my eyes. Like, I could look normal to any person, but he's attuned to my frequency and on purpose. And he might look at me and say, like, hey, how you doing? Like, you feeling good? You feeling okay? And not like, oh man, you look tired. You look like shit. No, not like that. But just as an observation, as an opening, as an invitation into, is there anything you want to talk about or anything you need to share? And in those moments, sometimes I'm telling you, even as long as I've been doing this work and as aware as I am of my emotions and my body, and right now I am about 6.5 months pregnant. So it literally just changes all the time. And he's extra attuned to that as well. So for me, that's a check-in moment of like, oh, let me see, is there something, not what's wrong with me, is there something wrong with me, but like, is there something that I feel weighed down by, or something that I don't feel free around? And then I can bring that into the conversation. Now, let's say in this example of man and woman in a heterosexual relationship where the man embodies more masculine energy and she embodies more feminine energy, in that example, let's say that the man has not addressed his mother wound. Let's say that he still carries within him this energy of responding to a wounded mother from a place of his own wounding. That will inevitably come into his romantic relationship. It can't not. That part of him that wants to make sure that mom is okay. That part of him that wants to make sure that he doesn't overwhelm mom with his stuff because she barely has the capacity to handle her own stuff, or doesn't have capacity at all for even her own stuff. The part of him that wants to push back against what she wants, to try to individuate himself and reclaim his voice and his power, the part of him that wants to, or feels the need to kind of overindulge in his ego because he feels so unheard that now he's got to overcompensate to make his voice heard. All those things are going to come out, and vice versa with a woman, that little girl in her, in relation to her dad. And so a man who has not done the healing work around his mother wound, to whatever extent that may be. You don't have to have been in an abusive situation with your mother as a man to have some deep mother wound healing to do. But a man who has not delved into that work will respond to his feminine counterparts, feminine frequency, differently. So maybe instead of responding with care, deep love and care, he might respond with resentment and bitterness and, why is this my problem now? Or can you just be okay for once? So there's always that response. But beneath all of this is this incredible recognition that if we know that our feminine frequency is what actually is leading, this is not about, oh, now I'm in power, I'm in control. No, it's that, how amazing is that? Not just because, it's not just because I get to set the tone and he will respond to that and then ping pong back and forth. But even more so that this is it's so freeing. Because let's say that you recognize this truth, and you start noticing how your man responds to your frequency. And before that, you start being really extra aware of what frequency you're bringing in the first place, how you're feeling in your body, how you're, what energy you're operating from, fear or love, even just defining that. But the freedom in this that I'm talking about is that you get to observe how your partner responds. Let's say in this example, how your masculine embodied man responds. And if you notice that the more attuned you are to your own frequency and aware of what you're bringing into the space, and it's more love and more peace and more joy and more hope, and he's still responding in a way that is not loving or not caring or combative instead of collaborative, this is valuable feedback. This is such valuable, it's invaluable, it's priceless. And from that feedback, eventually you will know, okay, is this something that we can grow in together? Or is this something that, we are being called to be on different paths? Because this is another question that I get so often is, how do, what if I start, emitting the frequency that I want, whatever that even is or means, and he's still not stepping up into that leadership role. He's still not, protecting and providing and whatever in the ways that your heart really, really deeply desires. Well, then you're going to know. All of this is going to be valuable feedback. But just knowing that your frequency really is setting the tone. It's a huge privilege. You can choose to see this as a burden or as a privilege and an honor and a sacred responsibility. I notice that if I walk into the room, no matter how great my partner's feeling and how he's, maybe have it like vibing in the kitchen with the kids. If I walk in and I'm like, ugh, it's like a heavy, dense cloak around the whole space, and it makes it a little bit harder to breathe and relax for everybody. And I notice this. I can see it and I can feel it. And this is not about being perfect all the time, because that's impossible. It's about being open to the fullness of your human experience and not resisting it. Because you know what creates the most chaos in my experiences is when I resist that I'm just sad. When I resist that I just don't feel good. And when I resist that I'm feeling angry or frustrated. And I don't allow it space to just be. Whereas if I know, like, man, I'm like exhausted today and I'm frustrated because this and this didn't work out smoothly, and now I have to deal with that. And I just let myself feel that authentically, and I just make peace with it. It doesn't even have to go away necessarily, but I make peace with it, and I trust that it's going to work its way through my system. And then I walk into the kitchen and everyone's preparing dinner and getting things ready for the evening. There is a lightness even about that I'm carrying, because I'm going into that space not only authentically and not putting on a happy fake smile like, hey, everything's great, because they can feel when that's fake ass shit too. But I'm not exuding my full radiance and whatever, but I'm at peace. I'm at peace with being frustrated. They feel that frequency too. And they respond to that frequency. And it's completely different than if I just go in there fighting my own frustration. I hope that you're tracking with me on this. I know we've gone through so many different rabbit holes, and there are so many more deep layers that we could explore within this. But the message that I want to emphasize here is it's beautiful. It's beautiful how your feminine frequency leads first. And another piece to this is that every man has his own feminine frequency as well. Just want to throw that little nugget in there. But when we're talking about the polarity within a couple, whoever is bringing in that feminine frequency the most clearly and palpably, that's what I'm talking about here. So I do not take that responsibility lightly. And I see this as a continued opportunity to deepen into my truth. Again, not perfection, not being happy and, bubbly all the time. No, but into my truth. And what is the deeper truth, the distilled truth within that I am meant to experience through the uncomfortable emotions. And then the other piece of this that I hope to drive home in this episode, which is a little longer than the others, is that swing from the distorted masculine expression to revealing and exposing, illuminating the distortions in your feminine energy, so that you can come to this space of clarity and sovereignty and real power within yourself. That's real reclamation, integration, bringing home these parts of you that you have judged, rejected, put in a box. And that further empowers you and feeds into this cycle of emitting a more clear, I don't want to, not conscious, but intentional frequency. And how that is what's really leading. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and your takeaways on this episode. It was a little more meaty, a little more, again, layers to this. But feel free to leave your comments below if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify. Otherwise, thank you for tuning into this episode, and here's to liberating your wild feminine heart.